Alright guys, so one of the main questions I got on my balance point versus sit down, or I'm sorry, stand-ups versus sit-downs video was using the rear brake. People were asking how I implement the rear brake, and I'll be honest with you, like 90% of the time I'm not using rear brake. It's all within your throttle hand. So if you have good throttle control, you don't technically need your rear brake. If you go past balance point, or if you're doing slow wheelies, you're definitely going to need your rear brake. But I'm going to show you what I do. I always cover the rear brake first and foremost, but I go out sometimes and I will hit my first couple wheelies and I'll use the rear brake to set it down on purpose, because I want to stay familiar with that rear brake in case I ever have an old shit moment where, you know, I'm gonna, you know, get close to looping it or whatever. I've, you know, knock on wood, I've never gotten that close on this bike, but it happens. So I'm gonna show you right now how I use it to put it down on purpose. So I'll pop a stand-up wheelie and then I'll set it down with the rear brake, alright? So, wheelie, now rear brake. See that? So you do that, I'm doing that on purpose, set it down on purpose, because you want to stay familiar with that rear brake, okay? Now I'll do it again, okay? Wheelie. Now rear brake. See? Throws the bike down really quick. And that's just like me barely putting any pressure on the rear brake. So you always want to cover that rear brake. I use this tactic just to stay familiar with the rear brake, like I said. But you're going to want to stay, if you start doing slower wheelies, at the next hill I'll try to do a slower wheelie for you. Try to keep it around, I don't know, 50 miles an hour or so. Now if you're doing slower wheelies like that, you're definitely going to have to use the rear brake to slow it down and keep it slow. So up at this next hill I'll do it, this next straightaway. That should be a good sign. There's no cops ahead, hopefully. Alright, so third gear, 5,000 RPMs, rolling around 50 miles an hour, okay? So now I'm implementing the rear brake just to keep it a little bit slower than typical. See, my front wheels stop. So that's another way you can use the rear brake to keep the wheelie a little bit slower. You just get it up to where the balance point is, and then if you go past that, you tap the rear brake, or you tap the rear brake and it gives yourself a second to lower the RPM, so you slow the speed of the bike down. So it's just something you have to play with, you know. It's not something I just learned, you know, within a couple weeks or even a month of doing wheelies. So just something you gotta play with and learn. But the tactic of using the rear brake purposely to put the wheelie down is a very good tactic, because you want to keep that in the back of your head. You always want to have that like security of being able to put the wheelie down. You know, if shit goes south and you need to save yourself, then that's going to be your number one tool. You know, you can let off the throttle depending on what gear you're in and how your bike is geared. If you have a lot of engine braking, which this bike has pretty decent engine braking. My Ninja 1000 had insane engine braking. It was ridiculous. So this bike, typically I can just let off the throttle and it'll slow the bike down, or it'll put the bike back down on its own. But it's a good tactic to have. So alright guys, I'm out of here. Stay safe and ride wheelies for me, alright? Peace.